going to stop 3 minutes short of its designated 25 minutes length. I'll leave the full description in the description box, the link to the original source, and in the pinned comment.
The disruptive world of synthetic biology is bigger than I could even hope to keep track of, but some companies have stuck out to me and got me to dig deeper. In this video, we're going to focus on one company said to be a pioneer in the field, Amyris Biotechnologies. The technology platform that Amyris is using allows them to brew molecules to produce fuels, foods, tires, solvents, and more.
So first off, tell me what Amyris is.
Sure, Wendy. What Amyris is, we are a company that engineers microorganisms to make them living factories so they can take sugarcane syrup, something that's readily available and very natural, and convert it to the chemistry and products people want. So in a way, we're remaking the world in a very sustainable way with high-performance chemistry that's really disrupting markets today.
You have 15 commercial products. What kinds of products are they?
We have 15 commercial products, and they range from some of the leading fragrance ingredients, some of which are currently used in Tom Ford's latest releases, as an example, all the way to one of the world's leading emollients, which is really a skin moisturizer. Those products, the 15 products we have commercially today, are touching about 200 million consumers and are in about 500 of the world's leading brands, just to give you a sense of the reach we have. And our goal is to get to about 1 billion consumers being touched by our products by 2020.
So there's a decent chance that I'm using some of your products.
I would be surprised if you're not, somewhere in one of the key ingredients. Okay. And the good news is it's a natural source product, it's high performing, and it's typically, if it's an ingredient being used by one of our partners, it is typically the highest performance ingredient you can have in one of your products.
I see, okay. And what else is in the pipeline?
We have about more than 100 products in the pipeline. And what's really important is not necessarily the specific nature of the products, but I'll try to give you a sense of the categories of products, and that they're all with partners, which means that the go-to-market, the acceptance of the product, is really locked in with the partner who's committed to us to using that product in their final applications, in their final products. So the categories are, one that I'm very excited about is what I'll call the sugar reduction market. There's a tremendous amount of movement around the world to taxing sugar in soft drinks and eventually in more than just soft drinks. And what we have is we've engineered the ability to deliver a very high-performing sweetener without all the calories, basically giving you a 70% reduction in calories with better sweetening power and no sour taste, right? So
that's good.
That's one of the exciting parts of our business. That's part of the 100 products in the product pipeline. We have a significant number of additional fragrances that we're launching in market, additional flavors, food ingredients, and then we have quite a bit in the skincare side, or I'll call it cosmetic actives. That are also in the
organ
portfolio.
of your body.
So a wide range, a couple of very exciting categories that we're leading in, and that we're partnered with some of the world's best companies to ensure we get to market with those products.
Yeah, a lot of products in development, so I imagine you think 2017 is going to be a very good year.
Amyris's founding purpose was to demonstrate that biotechnology could be used to help solve some of the world's most pressing problems, such as those outlined in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals.
With the help of the Indian government and scientists there, clinical trials of perimycin are now complete. It has a 94% cure rate for black fever at a fraction of the cost, less than $10 for a full course of treatment. And for One World Health, it is just the beginning. Right now, the nonprofit drug company is partnering with researchers at UC Berkeley and Amyris Biotechnologies to create a more affordable, accessible cure for malaria. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave One World Health a grant of more than $42 million to make it happen. For Victoria Hale, her dream of easing suffering and saving lives worldwide is coming true.
And in 2015, Amyris was recognized with the United Nations Global Citizen Award. One of the main backers of Amyris is John Doerr, who is said to be one of the most successful investors in America. He was one of the first investors in Amazon and Google.
John, you have worked with and helped empower and elevate some of the great minds in technology. Gates, Jobs, Bezos, Page, Grove, and many more.
In the U.S., supportive policies have been driving forward the bio-based economy. In 2004, the U.S. Department of Energy published a report, Top Value-Added Chemicals from Biomass, acknowledging that bio-based processes are often faster and more energy-efficient production routes than petrochemical processes, translating into cost reductions, providing manufacturers an economic benefit.
Very quickly, I got frustrated that it took a long time to just get the DNA that we needed.
The really new thing about what we've developed is that we use enzymes to synthesize DNA. Inspired by nature, we use a process that's very similar to how DNA is actually made in living cells.
Sebastian and Dan's discovery is really important for the kinds of research that we do here at JBay. We engineer plants and microbes to produce new products, and this will allow us to synthesize DNA more inexpensively. For DOE, this means that it will drop the cost of synthesizing DNA, and that's at the core of a lot of the basic biology that DOE does, as well as the applied biology to produce fuels and chemicals from biomass. Wherever biology is involved in production of food, in solving human disease, in cleaning up the planet, this technology will play an important role.
A few years later, in 2007, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency published a report, Bioengineering for Pollution Prevention, where they said that industrial biotechnology used in bio-based processes and in so-called renewable chemical production can reduce carbon emissions and eliminate waste, among other praising. Industrial biotechnology is intended to replace products with petrochemical origin with products produced by means of fermentation using genetically engineered microorganisms and to produce so-called impossible molecules which cannot be produced by petrochemical processes. In 2015, Amherst signed a $35 million contract with DARPA as a part of their Living Foundries project that's looking to produce things like those impossible molecules, unnatural polymers, new nanomaterials, and more.
Engineering cells that can produce medicines, fuels, even cosmetic compounds, all from simple ingredients like sugarcane or grass.
One day I think you'll be a Nobel Prize winner.
The carpet on the floor, the paint on the walls, the ceiling tiles, they all come from petroleum. We have the potential to produce all of these products from sugar.
Jay Kiesling is a pioneer in synthetic biology, a field even he didn't know existed just 10 years ago.
The term synthetic biology, what does that mean? That means engineering biology to do things that it wouldn't naturally do.
Today, Kiesling's man-made microbes are having a profound impact. From a new low-cost anti-malarial drug,
The product will be on the market in 2013. That means 100 million people will be impacted by this scientific discovery.
to cleaner, more efficient alternatives to gas and ethanol. They can be programmed to save lives one day, the environment the next. Sound like science fiction? Well, get ready to step inside the Kiesling lab and meet a scientist hell-bent on a brighter future. I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and this is The Next List.
Our first big success using synthetic biology was to engineer a yeast to produce a precursor to anti-malarial drug artemisinin. We were engineering microbes to produce chemicals, and one of my graduate students happened on a paper that described this drug that treats malaria.
It's a 95% effective cure against uncomplicated malaria, meaning 95% of the time you'll take the drug, 3 days later you'll be cured of malaria. The problem is it comes from a plant which is seasonally in short supply.
And so we read about artemisinin, we looked at the chemical structure, and we said, boy, I think we can make that.
And that's where the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came in. So they put in the first tranche of money that allowed us to work on the anti-malarial and give it away for free.
The product will be on the market in 2013. They plan to produce 100 million treatments annually. That means 100 million people will be impacted by this scientific discovery. Their lives will be made better or their children's lives could be saved. That project allowed us to start Amyris. We brought together some really fantastic scientists, a small team, to nucleate Amyris, and it's blossomed into a 500-person company.
And I think that's what Jay gave to his students, to the founders of Amyris, a chance to move from the lab to the real world.
At its foundation, Amyris is an integrated renewable products company. So we bring renewable products to the marketplace. Currently, most of our effort is in the recoding to make something called farnesene. Farnesene is a hydrocarbon, very high-performance hydrocarbon that can be used to make all different kinds of products.
It can produce flavors and fragrances that we find in our perfumes, that we find in some of our processed foods, even in things like detergents to make them smell better.
We have to remember that this synthetic biology everything project has been a long-running goal, not only in the US, it's been happening everywhere, and governments are huge players, long-term backers.
Most people hear microbes and they think something that can cause a problem, cause an infection. You look at microbes and see what?
I see little chemical factories. And in fact, that's how we treat them. And the way we do this is by engineering the genes. So changing their genetic makeup changes the chemistry that goes on inside them.
Once you figure out how you want to tweak it, what genetic material needs to be in the microbe or the plant, how do you do it? What's the process of actually doing that?
Well, that process has been around for 40 years, right? In the early 70s, we learned how to clone DNA. We learned how to cut pieces of DNA that contain genes and to splice them into another piece of DNA. And that technology has come a long way in the last 40 years to the point now where it's not just one gene that we can cut and splice, it's many genes.
So this is an example of some of the coding that people have been doing, putting together these pieces of DNA. What that actually ends up giving you is colonies of yeast in a grid fashion like this that are all the output of coding you've done in the DNA. So from the computer into a living yeast cell.
They don't have to tell you how they got the molecules. It's all about the definitions and rules around ingredients, and right on cue to transition the food system over to their biosimilar world, we're seeing all kinds of relaxing over at the FDA.
The typical plant is about 2/3 sugar, whether it's a tree in the forest or the grass in your lawn. Those sugars can be used to produce fuels. But in order to produce the fuels, we have to get the sugars out of the plant. Now, the genetic modification of the plant could make this process much easier. For instance, we might be able to extract the sugars much faster using the genetically modified plant than the normal plant.
So you're doing two things. You're genetically modifying the plants to have more sugar available, and you're genetically modifying microbes to then use that sugar.
Exactly. What we really want is a plant that grows well and at the same time is able to release its sugars when we want them released.
Is there an ideal plant from what you've learned so far?
There's no one plant that's going to be the silver bullet. It'll all depend on the climate and the location. So in the U.S. Midwest, the Plain States might have switchgrass. The Pacific Northwest might have trees. The very deep South could have sugarcane. So it all depends on the climate, the amount of rain, sunshine, etc.
Let me guess, where you're originally from, Nebraska.
Cornstover. And the interesting thing about Cornstover is we could have our food, the corn, and use the rest of the crop for producing energy.
Back in 2016, Amyris and Johnson & Johnson's Janssen Biotech collaborated to develop a library of natural and nature-like compounds and then test the efficacy of those compounds in vivo for hits against Janssen's therapeutic targets. And just in time for the exit of Johnson & Johnson's baby powder in the US and Canada, Amyris has launched their baby cream to powder under its Pipette baby brand. The Pipette brand has even joined in the Sanitize Everything movement by putting out their synthetic biology-based hand sanitizer. Pipette is said to have brought their sanitizer to market in record time, less than 2 weeks, so it could get in on the sanitizer frenzy. As with all Pipette products, Amyris's synthetic biology-derived squalane is the main ingredient. Thanks to the squalane, it's said to not dry out your hands. Caroline Hadfield, president of Pipette, said that Pipette is raising the bar for clean baby care, that our millennial consumers are now becoming parents and they demand a cleaner, safer option for their babies.
The millennial customer wants transparency.
They're getting away from petrochemically derived ingredients and more towards naturally derived plant-based ingredients.
The clean beauty movement isn't just a trend, it's not a fad, it's actually the way forward.
The planet doesn't have unlimited resources, so we need to find new, innovative ways to source ingredients and to make products.
Amyris was really founded with the objective of taking rare and precious molecules from nature and then finding a way to make them abundant and accessible.
The first ingredient that we made was an anti-malaria drug.
We then stepped into other categories of fragrance, flavors, and cosmetic ingredients.
One of the first ingredients that Amyris used their sustainable technology for was squalane.
Something to consider about these synthetic biology-based Pipette products is that they are Environmental Working Group verified, Leaping Bunny approved.
EWG, the Environmental Working Group, is a consumer advocacy group that has been credited with mass consumer awareness of chemicals in everyday products. EWG's Skin Deep database now boasts over 70,000 ingredients and receives over 10 million sessions per year. Many brands are launching EWG-verified products. Caroline Hadfield launched Biossance, which was the fastest-growing clean beauty brand in the U.S., and now leads Pipette, a new clean baby care brand. Both brands are EWG verified.
Amyris's Neosance squalane product is said to be a superior carrier of CBD, which Amyris is also brewing up.
We make the world one molecule at a time. We do it by re-engineering yeast, something that's been around forever, but instead of yeast making wine or beer, we actually get yeast through a fermentation process to make natural products sustainably. Everything from products for skincare ingredients, flavors, fragrances, vitamins, and now cannabinoids. We have 10 different ingredients, very different product derivatives off those ingredients, so rather than go through all of them, I'll pick one, squalane. Squalane is an amazing ingredient. It's actually an emollient, which means a moisturizer for your skin. It's been used in Japan for over 100 years. It was originally sourced from shark liver oil. And how I initially got to know it is a leading Japanese producer of the ingredient came to me and said, look, I don't think it's right that we take it from shark liver oil. Can you find a better answer? So we found a way to get yeast to make it from sugar cane juice to squalane. So that's a perfect example of an amazing ingredient that every formulator in the world knows it's the best emollient for your skin and for skincare products, but because it wasn't readily available and it came from sharks, it wasn't actually broadly used. So by making it more available, more supply at a stable cost and high purity, we've actually significantly expanded the market for it. We're now the market share leader for squalane. We've expanded the pie. It's a bigger market than it was when we started. And the growth rate, the last 6 months as an example, we've sold more squalane to the world's leading cosmetic companies than the prior year. So we're growing squalane now at around 60 to 70% a year, and it's just been a fantastic experience for us. A lot of plant material, and if you think about traditional Chinese medicine, has been around for a very long time. So it's not like the science is catching up. It's actually, for once, there is a way for the science to make more available and more accessible something that actually does good for society. And I think in this particular example, both on the consumer side, but also if I think about opioids and the real crisis that opioids are causing across the world, I think a scientific approach to making cannabinoids in a high quality, high purity, low cost way will make them more accessible and make them actually in a way that expands the market, just like we've seen in other markets that we're in. And in this particular case, a market that means all of society, not just a niche.
And that CBD, when used with Amyris's Neosance squalane, penetrated skin faster than with other carrier oils.
Out of the 10 products we've now commercialized through fermentation, And we're at a rate of commercializing about 2 to 3 a year now, right? So the system is working in a very industrial strength way. All those products compete with an alternative source, and predominantly plant source, unlike squalane that's an animal source. And in the plant source materials, we actually see the total pie grow, and we see the plants actually being a niche and opportunity going forward. We don't see it as plant or sustainable natural. We see as sustainable natural working, even in some cases blending with plant, but more importantly, making available the amount of supply at the right cost and quality that enables big brands to adopt in a big way.
Advertised as GMO-free and derived from botanical sugars, some might care to know that it's remade nature being pumped out of heavily edited yeast that are fed that sugar, and what else, I wonder? But they're just the processing aid that they don't have to tell you about. They say molecules are molecules, it doesn't matter how they're sourced. So synthetic biology companies can call their products pure and clean and sustainable.
I mean, our whole focus has been to make something that has all the good and none of the bad. And what we've realized is the consumer is really overwhelmed with lots of colors, and most of them bad for you. So our whole focus was to take something really good and natural like sugarcane, and instead of making sugar from sugarcane, making a 0-calorie natural sweetener that's good for you. No aftertaste and competitively priced with sugar.
So it launches today. Where would consumers be able to find it? Are you going to sell it directly to the consumer, or are you more focused initially on, say, food and drink manufacturers getting it in their products?
Yeah, I think very early, we hope you'll find it in many of the products you use at home. Everything from a chocolate that you might eat, a baked good that you might consume. And then eventually we'll be selling direct to consumers here in the U.S., and we start direct to consumers in Brazil later in or around middle of 2019.
In addition to entering the cannabinoid market, Amyris is said to be moving quickly toward the commercialization of its first human milk oligosaccharide molecule, or HMO, human milk sugars. We looked at these synthetic biology-derived HMOs a couple years ago and how they've been on the market for years in products like Similac infant formula.
So this first slide encapsulates what Amyris does at a high level. We engineer microbes that consume sugar and convert it to pure ingredients. Our goal is to make clean manufacturing powered by biology the industry standard for how all product ingredients are manufactured in the future. The second market for us is in health and wellness. This includes multiple vitamins that are derived from fermentation and our soon-to-be-launched sweetener, as well as human nutrition ingredients, which includes our applications in the pharma space as well. Our partners in this market
look up Dr.
DSM,
Mercola
Givaudan,
and Sinomex.
Finally, the third market that we operate in is in the flavor and fragrance market, where we work with
They're out of
companies like
San Diego,
Givaudan and
California.
Chicago. In each case, these companies have a well-established presence in the marketplace for these ingredients, but are trying to solve some supply chain issue, whether it be cost, sustainability, or purity. And in every case, Amyris is able to perform all the R&D required to develop the strains and a new manufacturing process, manufacture the ingredient, and finally deliver the same product that gives our partners an advantage in their marketplace.
But what about safety? They say the genetic engineering applied should not be confused with the controversial gene manipulation, since no genetically manipulated molecules are released. The genetically edited yeast is only a processing aid, and no genetically manipulated fragments can be detected in the desired end product. There are so many actors in the realm of synthetic biology: companies, universities, governments. In case you're not already aware, synthetic biology is a lot of what's being talked about when you hear things like sustainable development. It's planned to be a big part of our everyday life, more than it already is. And according to John Mello, former BP executive and president and CEO of Amyris, they're also working with the pharmaceutical community and government agencies to apply their synthetic biology platform to help scale a vaccine adjuvant and potential therapies for COVID-19 as they evolve through trials. So many people want to save the environment and feed the world, and they're being misled to believe remaking nature is the only way. I would love to hear what you think. Remember, this is only a peek at the new world that they're brewing up. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. As with all of my videos, a link to the sources is in the description below. Please help me get this information out to people. Share it anywhere and any way that you can. Thank you for listening.